Okay, in the next several lessons, we're going to be studying factoring. Now, think of factoring this way. When we multiply things, we put them together. When we factor things, we take them apart. And if you're familiar with cars or construction, sometimes you want to put stuff together and sometimes you want to take stuff apart, depending on what you want to do. Well, factoring is a method of taking things apart. Now, the first method of factoring that we're going to study is the greatest common factor. The greatest common factor is the greatest factor that divides two numbers. Okay, so the first thing that we want to factor out of here is a 6. We want to factor a 6 out of 24, 18, and 12. We can't factor anything greater that would be common. That is, it would pertain to all three of these. Now, if you don't see that, that's fine. I showed you how to do that in an earlier lesson, and guess what? I'm going to repeat that right now. Now we're going to divide each of these numbers up into their smallest parts. Now their smallest parts are called prime factors. A prime factor is the lowest factor that a number is divisible by except for itself and 1. So the prime factors of 24, or the smallest parts of 24, are 2 times 2 times 2 times 3. That's as much as I can divide 24 out. 18 would be 2 times 3 times 3. And 12 is 2 times 2 times 3. Now, let's see the prime factors, the parts of these numbers that are common to all three. 2 is common to all three. How many 2's are there that are common to all three? Well, this one only has one 2. So only one 2 is common to all three. So let's circle that and save it. And the only other number that we have is 3. And all of these numbers have one 3. The first number doesn't have more than one 3. So even though this one has 2 3's, it's not common to the other numbers. As a matter of fact, 18 is the only number that has 2 3's. So it isn't common to the other numbers. So the factors that are common to all three numbers is 2 and 3, which means 2 times 3. So 2 times 3 is 6, and that's where we started. I told you that 6 was going to be the greatest common factor to all three of these numbers. Now, if you already knew that, if you have eyes that can see that, great. Okay, but if you don't, this is the best way to do it. I know there are other ways to do it, but this is the best way to do it as far as I'm concerned. So let's start off with factoring a 6 out of all those numbers. And the variables are a lot easier because all we need to do is well, let's start with x. And let's find the x with the lowest exponent. See, we have a 4 here, we have a 2 here, and we have a 3, so 2 would be the lowest. Now, why did we pick the lowest? Because 2 squared is the only variable that is common to all of these terms. I can't say x cubed, right? That would be common to that, and x cubed is common to this, but it's not common to that. I can't pull x cubed out of here, can I? Okay, so the most that I can pull out is x squared. Okay, let's try y next. Y squared, y4, and y to the 1. Okay, so what is our greatest common factor? Well, the lowest exponent of y would be 1, so that is our greatest common factor for y. And by the way, I put a 1 up there if that's helpful to you. It's not helpful to me, but if it's helpful to you, put a 1 up there. I know I have a lot of students who find that very helpful. So put a 1 up there if that's helpful. And then bring your y1 down here, and guess what? Erase the 1 when you're done. And z, we got a z here. We don't have any z's here. Okay? So z is not common to all three of these. It's common to this, and it's common to this term, but it is not common to the second term. So guess what? We are done. This is our answer. This is the greatest common factor for these terms. Now let's try another one. Okay, numerically, I think this is pretty obvious. 4 is going to be the greatest common factor. I can get a 4 out of here. I can get a 4 out of here, and I can get a 4 out of there, and I can't get more than a 4 out of 4. So that's pretty simple. If it's not, go through the process that I've already taught you. Okay, and the only variable that we have going on is x, and we have x squared, we have x, and we don't have anything here. So x is not common to all these. It's only common to 2 of them. It needs to be common to all 3 or all 4 or however many factors or terms you have. In this case, we have 3. So our greatest common factor is 4. We don't have anything greater than that. Now let's try another one. Okay, like I said before, the first thing you want to factor out is your number. And it looks like 5 is common to all 3 of those terms. So let's factor out a 5. The only variable that we have is x, and the lowest exponent we have for x is x squared. So let's factor x squared out of all of those. And if they ask for the greatest common factor, what you have there is the greatest common factor, 5x squared. But if they ask you to factor something like this, that means you have to bring the rest of that down. So let's bring the rest of that down. Again, if they're asking you for the greatest common factor, this is your greatest common factor. If they're asking you to factor all of this, this is the way you would do it. And if we factor 5x squared out of 25x to the 4, this is what we have left, 5x squared. 5x squared times 5x squared is 25x to the 4. And if we factor 5x squared out of negative 15x cubed, this is what we have left. We have negative 3x. And if we factor 5x squared out of 20x squared, we're not going to have any x's left. And 20 divided by 5 is 4. And so that's what that would look like if they asked you to factor it. So let's look at another problem. Okay, let's factor a number out first. And let's see, we have 3 here, 5, and 4. There's nothing common to 3, 5, and 4 except for 1, and we don't factor 1s out, obviously. If you think that through, you'll see there's a real good reason for not factoring a 1 out. But anyways, so we're not going to factor a number out, and let's see what we have for variables. Well, the lowest exponent for x is 1, or the highest exponent that is common to all 3. See, you can say that both ways, the lowest or the highest. It's kind of confusing, but the lowest exponent for x is 1. The lowest exponent for y is y squared, and there is no lowest exponent for z. We do not have a z right here, so we are not going to be able to factor out a z because z is not common to all 3. So since we factored this out, let's put the rest of this down here. And that's what that will look like once you pulled that all apart. Now let's look at another one. Okay, 18, 27, and 9. 9 is common to all of those. The lowest exponent of a is 2, so a squared. And the lowest exponent of b is 3, which is common to all 3 of those. Okay, 18 by 9, I have 2 left. If I divide a4 by a squared, I have a2 left. And b3 divided by b3 leaves me nothing left as far as the b's go. Negative 27 divided by 9 is going to be negative 3. A cubed divided by a squared is going to be a. And b cubed divided by b cubed is going to leave us nothing else. That eliminates that b on that term. Okay, and on the third term, 9 divided by 9 is 1, so that 9 is eliminated. And a squared divided by a squared is 1, so a squared is eliminated. And b cubed over b cubed eliminates that b cubed. So there's nothing left of that third term. Or is there? Come on now. If you're multiplying or dividing, a term is not going to disappear. Now, if you're adding and subtracting, a term can disappear, but not if you're multiplying and dividing. So you're always going to have at least one left. And think about that. 9a squared b cubed over 9a squared b cubed is what? It's 1. Now, the reason why I did that is because it's a very common mistake. Students do that all the time, and they leave off that 1, and they can do all this beautiful work and then get the answer wrong because they didn't put that 1 in there. And if you do your homework, maybe you'll make that mistake once or twice, and then by the time you get to the test, you're not going to do that, are you? Do you promise? Come on, don't do that on the test. Homework is one thing. Get a little sloppy on your homework, that's one thing. Don't get sloppy on a test.